Trump is rewriting the rules of the global world order, and BRICS, otherwise known as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, had their own global system that they wanted to run by. However, they are beginning to crumble one by one as Trump imposes these tariffs and new rules around global trade. And these countries did this to get away from the almighty dollar and arguably just from being bullied by the United States. Because over the last few centuries, with the birth of industrialization, the US has been the most powerful financial and military force in the world. Our military budget is almost $1 trillion yearly. And for decades, our own leadership, both Republicans and Democrats, have arguably been selling us out to other nations. But Trump is now rewriting the rules with one fell swoop, and he's using tariffs to strike fear into the hearts of markets and other nations. Now, a few things make me actually believe this. One, the tariffs were imposed to be in a position of power because arguably most countries need the US more than the US needs them. And so the White House posted as recently as April 9th of this year, do not retaliate on our tariffs and you will be rewarded, which is a signal that they weren't actually planning to impose these tariffs all the way. What they were focused on is seeing who would reciprocate tariffs or retaliate back in order to say, okay, they want to play hardball versus they want to negotiate. Then within a very short period of time, they actually issued a 90-day pause, which gave us a chance to negotiate new deals with all of the countries that we imposed tariffs on. However, China didn't play ball. They actually chose to escalate. So Trump responded, right, we are going to do 125% tariffs now. And ultimately, you had Scott Bessent coming out and basically saying they were always willing to cooperate with their allies and with trade partners who did not retaliate. However, if they would have just shared that outright, people wouldn't have taken this thing seriously and made the calls. It wasn't a hard message, don't retaliate and things will turn out well. Yet China did not listen, and that is why the Chinese yuan is falling to its lowest level since 2007. And in response, Xi Jinping, their communist dictator, basically imposed sanctions on 18 American companies. This is turning into a trade war that will affect the global order of things. Now, when you think about countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, there are a few economies that are smaller, right? We're talking South Africa and even Brazil. Even though Brazil is a major country when it comes to the exports of coffee and a few other products, generally speaking, it is a far more poor country. Then you have up-and-comers like India, which are arguably very skill set based. You have a lot of very highly educated people and more education and industry making its way out there. And then finally, you have Russia, which has always kind of been somewhere in terms of a global superpower because of the military might they have surrounding nukes. And finally, the second largest economy in the world, China. Now, with China, we're not playing too friendly. Russia is somewhere in the middle. We're not too sure right now where we're at with Russia and Ukraine. But however, you have India, which really doesn't want to upset the United States and needs the United States far more than we need them, recently come out and reject an offer of BRICS countries, even though they are one of the major players in these BRICS countries, to trade in the new joint local currency. In other words, they don't want to play ball only with BRICS. They are wanting to work with the United States and especially negotiate these tariffs. However, there were a few community notes, which we are going to talk about in this video. Either way, I think he's very forward looking because he realizes if India loses the United States, they're kind of cooked, especially with the situation that China and Russia and Brazil and South Africa are in. Now, virtually all of this stuff is going to affect your crypto portfolio and bags. So in this video, we're going to cover just enough to get you through this week. But generally speaking, there's a lot of really important things that are happening right now. And so we do have some announcements surrounding surrounding a cabinet meeting and what they shared for the future of the United States. We're also going to be sharing a video from Charles Hoskinson, who talks about the impact of tariffs and where he thinks Bitcoin is going to be later in this year and why that matters for XRP. I believe XRP is going to closely follow and arguably even outperform Bitcoin. So based on his target, we're going to make a prediction on XRP. And then finally, we're going to cover this video from none other than Mr. Wonderful himself, Kevin O'Leary, talking about what we need to do or how we need to continue to trade and operate with China, because this is a truly once in a lifetime opportunity. And he said this when we were at 104% tariffs, but then within that day, we increased it to 125%. And I believe that's probably going to continue to climb, which will leave markets in a bit of disarray and uncertainty. So as always, my friend, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PauliDeFi. Here's an article from the BBC talking about BRICS and which countries have joined. And back in 2006, Brazil, Russia, India, and China created the BRIC group. Then South Africa joined in 2010, just for a quick history. Since that point in time, they have been growing and they've added quite a few smaller nations to the list. We have Saudi Arabia, which is obviously your biggest player in oil. You also have Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. Kind of funny when you actually look at the size of their GDPs, right? 0.51 trillion for the UAE, yet most of that's probably just sitting in private bank accounts and wallets. That said, everything was moving along quite smoothly through the Obama era, into the Trump era, and well into the Biden era, until that is Donald Trump got elected yet again. And I believe most of these people or prime ministers saw the writing on the wall. They knew that if they played hardball with Trump, he'd play hardball back. He wasn't a pushover like Biden. Now, say what you want, but virtually everyone I know agrees Biden was a total layup for just about anyone to get anything they wanted through the White House. Why? Because the guy was half dead and half baked. That said, even if you don't or do like Trump, at the end of the day, he's obviously a harder leader to play with. Recently, I saw a video of him speaking very harshly even towards the prime minister of Israel, or the sitting powerful person, Benjamin Netanyahu, saying, we've given them so much money. Why should we give them any more deals, even on tariffs? And you could see Netanyahu probably really didn't like that. So even with our closest allies, Trump is just going to say what he believes. And that's what's scaring a lot of these people in the BRICS nations, because they're not in a position of power just yet, even all combined, to take on the US when it comes to our global consumerism. Ultimately, they need us, and we can still produce things, and the biggest companies in the world and the best technologies are still built in the United States, and we were losing a lot of that dominance and power over the years. However, with Trump in office, Narendra Modi, who is the Prime Minister of India, basically stated that he's no longer going to be trading in the new joint local currency, and now he's probably wanting to negotiate tariffs with the United States. There is some misleading context because this stuff came out as early as December 2024 and as late as February of 2025. However, the point I'm trying to make is this: after Trump was elected in November, Modi started making moves, and he made them quickly, which leads me to believe obviously he's going to want to negotiate with tariffs, and ultimately he's going to deny anything that's going on here, or at least curb India's use of any outside currencies, because if they do, they will be slammed hard with tariffs. And no country, especially if they are developing like India, who has a real shot at bringing a lot of their nation out of poverty, would go and do that. However, over the last few decades, the real bad player in all of this has been China, and they've been growing off the backs of virtually every nation, but most importantly, the United States. And they've gotten to a point now where they're trying to cut the United States out of a lot of deals in other areas. Imagine if we only made deals with everyone else but China. We only allowed our products to be bought from other countries except for China. Yet most of our products were made in China. That's because they had great manufacturing, cheap labor, blah, 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 blah. Yet we could not sell sell our products over there, or they were highly tariffed, which just wasn't fair. So we imposed these tariffs to arguably bring down a notch or two the second most powerful nation in the world. They retaliate, and then you have Mr. Wonderful sharing something quite interesting on social. Let's listen.
104% tariffs in China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, and sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that look like?
I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well, hold on a second, Kevin. Well, I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people, the average consumer, not necessarily the head honchos of businesses all across the globe, can they withstand the pressure of that sort of tax on the goods?
It's short-lived. There will be
but what's your timeline compared to, you don't know the average American's timeline, what they can actually survive. There's people right now who can't survive
400% tomorrow morning, cheese on an airplane to Washington to cut a deal.
And that truly seems to be the case, because we do now have evidence and proof that the strategy has not necessarily been to impose the tariffs for a long period of time. It's to bring countries to the negotiating table, as he issued the 90-day pause. This was driven by the president's strategy. According to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, he and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along. In other words, anyone that's going to be a bad actor and want to play hardball, Trump is going to play double hardball, and ultimately it will create a lot of uncertainty. It's going to create a lot of friction and volatility, but in the long run, they're not hoping to impose tariffs forever. They're just hoping for new trade deals. And ultimately, this is likely going to bring a ton of prosperity back into the United States, and we are going to see a golden age for America, just like they were saying, even though we've experienced some pretty interesting volatility. Now, that said, the long-term trend to me is still up, as you can see on Bitcoin. However, in the short term, it still looks like we're struggling to get back above the $2.05 range. Right now, we're sitting on XRP at 201. Yes, I am liking these wicks. However, I would like to see the price close above 230 on any serious time frame for me to get a little bit more excited. As things stand, this is still an intermediate term downtrend. Now, it is possible that we continue breaking down. If Bitcoin breaks down to $67,000 or $72,000, XRP is likely coming right back down into the 175 range or lower. If Bitcoin breaks down to even $67,000 or $62,000 and anywhere lower, it's possible XRP breaks down to like 150 or potentially even 110 on the lows. And by the way, in any major event or volatility, we could see even lower lows. So if you're in a situation where you're currently struggling to buy these dips because you've already been in, or you're just wanting extra cash to buy the dips, then head on to the link down below for the relief consultants, because here there's another way for you to get access to some cash back before the tax deadline on April 15th. If you were a business owner, whether you actually employed people or didn't, doesn't matter. But if you were in business between 2001, then you should qualify for something. And if not, at least you fill out the form. It takes just a few minutes to find out. That said, here is a quick video from Nick explaining everything.
2025. This is a huge date because it's the deadline for 2 high-paying tax credits that you probably haven't heard about, but you can still get if you take action right now. We've partnered with the relief consultants who are experts in the tax code who've recovered over $100 million for their clients so far. So if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, listen up so we can get you help and reach our goal of recovering $10 million for the Bull Runners community before the April 15th deadline. So here's how it works. If you're a business owner who had employees in 2021, then you qualify for an average $150,000 check from the Treasury and possibly more with the Employee Retention Credit Program. So if you were told in the past that you don't qualify, get a second opinion now through the link in the description below this video, because there are rules and regulations that have changed just recently. So there's a high likelihood that you do qualify now. And if you sold your business or you shut it down, you still qualify as long as you were active in 2021. So don't miss out. Schedule an appointment with the link below. Just click business owner with employees if it applies to you. There's also a second tax credit that also ends April 15th. So this is for the bull runners who are self-employed in 2021. So if you were a 1099, not W-2, and self-employment was your primary income, the Treasury check for this tax credit can go up to $32,220 with an average of $17,000. So if you were self-employed in 2021 and want to see if you haven't claimed this credit, which nobody has from our community thus far for some strange reason. We've been talking about this in several videos. I don't know, man. Maybe you just want the Treasury to keep your money. But if you want to get money back in your pocket, then schedule a consultation. Don't be lazy. Do this right now before April 15th through the link below. Just click self-employed if you think you qualify for both credits. Let the rep know on the call. And by the way, if you have your tax returns from 2020 and 2021 for this credit, it will be a faster turnaround for you. So have them ready on your call, and they can literally tell you if you qualify on your first call to get you paid. So if you need more money back in your pocket for this bull run, take action right now. Click the link and let's get you paid.
So all you have to do to at least check, and all it takes is a few minutes. We literally have 3 days left, but the sooner you get in, the better, because they're going to be slammed over the last couple of days, filing taxes and doing all sorts of stuff. Again, you know, the sooner the better, truly, because they told us straight up, you know, if you're the last day, the last person, it's going to take us a lot longer, and you're going to be the bottom of the priority list. So that said, head on over to the relief consultants. You'll find the link in the description below. Click on this if you had employees. Click on this if you were self-employed. At least check it out. You'll schedule an appointment and you'll know within minutes whether or not you qualify to get any money back whatsoever. And if you do, this is free money essentially to buy that dip. Now, with that said, I will say that Charles Hoskinson shares a lot of interesting things, the founder of Cardano. One thing that he believes is going to happen is that Bitcoin is going to reach $250,000 by this year or the next. In other words, if we truly are in a longer term bull market with an intermediate term downtrend, let's say we see a little bit more downside or risk here in the near future with all the volatility and the events and the uncertainty, you might want to be sitting on some cash to buy those dips. And if the market actually does hit 250K, I'm just going to be honest with you, Bitcoin hits that, I think XRP easily hits $12 to $15 at minimum. So let's have a listen to what he says.
No, I think Bitcoin will be over 250,000 by the end of this year or next year.
What's going to drive that, do you think?
What'll happen is that the tariff stuff will be a dud, and then people will realize that the world is willing to negotiate. And it's really just U.S. versus China, and a lot of people will side with us, some people side with China. The markets will stabilize a little bit, and they'll get used to the new normal.
In other words, he's actually thinking what I'm personally thinking, is the fact that China is actually going to be the loser in this trade war, and ultimately the U.S. will come out on top because the markets are going to get used to the new world order. Now, just to cover what they shared at the at the cabinet meeting, I always think crypto, guys. First and foremost, the consumer prices have dropped, including energy prices. The country is making approximately $2 per day, assuming that the tariffs are currently being collected on. The Secretary of Defense just got back from Panama and signed a deal to allow U.S. vessels to travel freely. That's going to be huge for trade and jobs. They're negotiating tariffs. They've got the gold card coming soon for people to buy memberships to the United States at $5 million a pop, which could actually, if there are enough wealthy people that want access to the United States, ultimately pay for a lot of our national debt. From the educational side, they're fighting anti-Semitism. They're removing money from all sorts of institutions that have considered racism okay. And whether or not you're on the side of the Palestinians or the Israelis is not the point I'm trying to make. I think we shouldn't be talking negatively about anyone or their race whatsoever. We're increasing ship manufacturing, streamlining military acquisitions, canceling $22 billion in grants, approving power plants, deregulating, which is going to open up industry, working with agriculture, and ultimately working to lower that debt ceiling. If all of this comes to pass, this is going to be one of the largest bull runs in history. And ultimately, what you and I are looking at right now is just but a hiccup. But still, that doesn't mean that we can't see some potential more downside. In other words, if the market crashes or dumps a bit more because of some major event, well, guess what? We're all not going to be too happy. I am liking the buy volume on a 3-day time frame on this XRP chart. If I come down to the daily time frame, I'm also liking the fact that we're starting to put in some higher lows right here, but ultimately we do have to break above that 205 to 210 range and arguably get above this range high of 260 truly to be in an uptrend. In other words, I would like to see the price action do something like this and then continue to the upside. I'll buy all through this range right here. But until that remains to happen, ultimately this thing is looking more like it wants to continue dumping to the downside. And so I do want to buy these dips because I am a firm believer that the future is bright and that ultimately we're still in a major bull run. It's just going to be elongated now because the game plan has changed. Now, with that said, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel and also head down to bullrunners.com/altcoin secrets in order to get our free ebook that shows you how to become a pro crypto investor. You're going to get access to 23 different secrets that can make you very rich in crypto. Now, we cannot guarantee you results, but this is all of the stuff that I've learned over the years to choose and pick the right cryptos into the next bull market, how that looks, how they operate, and how you can do it yourself in order to outsmart 99% of the people that fail by learning the secrets of the top 1% in the crypto game. All you have to do is click this link and enter your email and you're good to go. You should get it in your inbox. So thanks so much for watching the video. I will see you in the next video, my friend. Goodbye.